Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 64 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 63 of A Game of Thrones. That's Catelyn 10.
As always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information, which will be particularly helpful if you're not reading along with us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm all right. I might be losing it a little bit. I've kept
a little bit more than normal.
Yeah, I've kept it together for 7 months now.
Yeah.
I'm ready to do family side.
You need another trip to the mountains. You guys had a good time when you went to the mountains, right?
We did, yeah. We go tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. That's why it was urgent that we record today.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we're down a man, not an actual man, but we're down a mic.
Yes.
So, hopefully I sound okay. Our Yeti mic stopped working suddenly, and we didn't have enough time to replace it. So, and we needed to record today because, as Simon just mentioned, he's going out of town tomorrow. So I'm just using an old headset here. So hopefully,
fingers crossed.
Yes, hopefully you could hear me.
You sound terrible to me, but that's probably my headphones. So
it's got to be that, yeah. I'm sure I'll sound great on the actual recording.
We shall. Are you going to eulogize the Yeti mic in the background?
I posted a picture of it on Facebook earlier today and said we're playing hurt. Our trusty mic was not so trusty all of a sudden.
Hey, on that subject, I noticed that your Steelers are 6-0.
Yeah, I hadn't mentioned that on the podcast because I didn't want to jinx them. So now, great, now look what you did.
I, on the other hand, took malicious glee.
So Molly and I had a question for you.
Okay.
You see how it says English accent on there?
I saw English accent in the notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she does the actor thing, she was submitted for the lead in a film where the main character has a slight English accent because her mother was English. She's lived her whole life in America, and I wondered, does that happen? Does Lucas have a bit of an English accent? I've never noticed it on him.
What you're telling me is there's budget for a voice coach.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
I was just wondering, I was like, well, Lucas is the product of one English accented parent, but I've never noticed an English accent on him.
What you will find, I do have first-hand experience of this, is that when they're small and they interact only with their parents, they will have a semi-English accent. Okay. And as they grow up and go to school, it will fade.
Yes,
and
okay.
That has happened. He is still capable and occasionally slips into the odd English word. The quintessential example being water.
Oh, he says water.
Water, with a T, which is coincidentally how it's spelled.
Right.
FYI.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, because Molly was like, well, how would I only do a partial English accent? I was like, it would just be like every now and then a certain word or sound would come out with the British accent.
I tell you what, I think she'll impress them if she says water occasionally. Just drops
right.
that in. And then maybe Mummy and Daddy.
Mummy and Daddy, okay.
Mummy and Daddy. That would probably be enough. That's enough of a spattering of it.
Right,
to make it seem like...
She doesn't need to sound like Mary Poppins.
Right. Yes. Which is pretty much where American actors go.
Right. Yes. Immediately.
They go the Dick Van Dyke route.
Good day, Governor.
The apples and pears. All right. I got nothing. I liked the way you did the toilet stories, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it worked very well.
That was the swan song of the mic. I was like, it was just working. I just recorded that little bit at the end of last episode. If you didn't make it till the end of last episode, um, we split the toilet story. Remember, Simon said I've got 2 toilet stories for you. I guess this is 2 episodes ago now, right?
Probably 2 episodes ago
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Simon had 2 toilet stories, but you may have noticed there was only one toilet story mentioned. At the very end of the episode, I have a little piece where I came back on and said, uh, the second toilet story was too long. It is after the music. So if you didn't
Simon
wait
spent
around
too
till after the
long,
music,
too long on the toilet.
yeah, that's right. All right. Anything else interesting in your life?
Seriously, no.
Okay, then.
All right,
All
let's get down
right.
to business.
Let's do it.
I've actually lost the notes, so I need to.
Let's pull the notes up, then get down to business.
Yeah. Let's get down to business with a quick recap of what Catelyn was up to last time we saw her. Last we saw her, she was charming Walder Frey into joining the Tully. There's a funny typo there. Last time we saw Catelyn, she was charming Walder Frey into joining the Tully Stark side of the burgeoning conflict. His significant forces boost the Northern host, and his willingness to allow them to cross the Green Fork means that Robb's trap can now be sprung. The army he sent down the King's Road has done its job, luring Tywin into a strategically poor location for his army, but now it's the turn of Robb's forces to break the siege at Riverrun. Why don't we give him the summary?
Let's do it. Robb's army has hidden themselves in a forest south of the Blue Fork River. Kat surveys the scene. She's ensconced among her bodyguards as they await the coming battle. Robb wanted 50, she wanted 10. They compromised at 30 as far as the bodyguards go. The whole scene is quiet and pensive. The army is not blundering into battle. They've instead laid an ambush.
Brydnen Blackfish Tully has been in charge of reconnaissance, and he's absolutely certain that Jamie does not know that they are here. Every raven has been felled, and every outrider has failed to report back. Jamie has 12,000 men, but besieging Riverrun is complicated by the rivers. Brydnen has been sending men in groups, made to appear like displaced Riverland knights, to pester Jamie's forces.
Jamie's a man of action, and he does not redouble his guard or entrench. He always responds by saddling up and chasing after his tormentors. Thus a plan is hatched. In the meantime, Kat thinks of times she's been made to wait. Her father always told her to watch for him when he left the castle. Brydnen Stark had her wait, but he never came back. She waited nearly a year for Ned to return from war soon after their wedding. Now she waits again, this time for Robb and Jamie Lannister. For Lannister to ride into their trap, and for Robb to lead the ambush when he does.
Robb's army has grown since leaving the Twins. Jason Mallister has brought his forces to the party, and they've collected knights and men-at-arms who survived the battle at Riverrun and fled north. Kat isn't the only Stark with an honour guard. She insisted that Robb too be surrounded by loyal men and women to increase his chances of surviving the battle. As Kat ponders the presence of snow shrikes, a bird primarily seen in the north, she sees the Kingslayer and his men ride into the trap.
Blasts of war horns explode around the forest, followed by Grey Wind's howl, signifying that the northern troops are ready to spring their trap. The silence of the forest explodes in screams and shouts as northern archers loose arrows at the unsuspecting Lannister troops. Unable to see the fighting, she closes her eyes and listens to the sounds of the battle. More screams, shouts, and clashes of metal on metal.
Eventually, Robb returns to her, his arms covered in blood, but it was the blood of one of his guards. Theon Greyjoy and Great John Umber drag Jamie Lannister between them, dumping him at her feet. We learn that, when it was clear the battle was lost, Jamie and his retainers cut a path through the Northmen, attempting to reach Robb. His guard stopped the charge, but at an awful cost. Kat reminds the men that they might have won the battle, but the war is far from over. Tywin and his army are still out there, and a formidable army still surrounds Riverrun.
I really like this chapter.
I did too. I think maybe you liked it more than I did, but I liked it as well. I think I liked it more than the last chapter. It's funny after all this time we've had 2 battles in consecutive chapters.
Yeah, we've had 3 really, if you think about it, because the chapter with Dany was also post-battle. It wasn't during battle, it was the aftermath of the battle, but a battle still took place.
Yeah. What was the sequence? Was it Tyrion, then Daenerys, then this, or was it Daenerys, then Tyrion, then this?
Yeah, you would think we'd know that off the top of our heads,
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
The problem I have is that I record one and then listen to the other, and then they get
Yeah,
mixed up in my head.
it went Danny, Tyrion, Cat.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, the amount of fighting has been ramping up.
yes.
But yeah, I like his way of handling this one better. I have to say. I
I
think
agree. Yes, it was almost at times it felt almost like this chapter was a poem. It was very poetically written. There was a lot of for a lot of metaphors, and it was I enjoyed it much more than the Tyrion battle where it was like hacking him here and hacking him there and fighting this guy and that guy. And of course, Kat was the POV character and she wasn't a participant in the battle.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It gives you the chance to sort of take the sort of like the detached perspective of the battle, which you couldn't really do with Tyrion because he was in the
Exactly.
thick of it.
Yes. I found it almost a little bit eerie and spooky, which fits well for a episode we're recording the week of
Yeah.
Halloween.
Why do you think I'm getting out of town? It's to avoid trick or treaters.
Oh, there you go. Will they avoid your house with their eggs and toilet paper? That is the question.
But by the way, actually, I've forgotten. I did have a story. I mean, you can splice this back into the early part if you want. But Carson started back at Carson's been back at school, as you know, because she's been recording, doing
From
video
the right,
chats from the toilet.
from the bathroom.
But the kids have come back now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Elementary school started back. Yes.
So they were. She's got 4 children in her class. All of them are 4 years old, and 3 teachers, 2 TAs and 1 teacher. So there's 3 adults and 4 children.
Pretty good
Okay, so
numbers.
I'm like,
Okay, yeah,
pretty good numbers and possible to keep everything socially distant.
sure.
She said one of the 4 children kept pulling her mask down to pick her nose, and
How else you gonna do it?
and of course they have to do video lessons for the other kids,
Oh,
the other
right.
11 kids in the class. They have to do video lessons, and the same nose picker had a meltdown in class, and Carson had to restrain her on her lap while doing the video thing for several minutes. And during that whole time, the child's mask was pushed around to her ear.
Oh.
And Carson came home with a stripe of like 6-inch stripe of snot across her
Oh,
shirt.
man, that's rough.
And I'm like, you're going to catch it. This is for
Oh,
sure. There's
goodness.
no escaping this.
Oh,
It's
wow. Yeah,
crazy.
that's a tough one there.
It's crazy. I mean,
Yeesh.
you can't tell a 4-year-old that they have to socially distance.
Ah,
It's just
yeah.
not
Four,
possible.
that's tough. That's pre-kindergarten, right?
Yeah, it's pre-K. That's her
Yeah,
class. Yeah.
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's a tough one right there.
So if I don't make it through the end of the book,
I'll try to carry
tell
on
me
without you.
tell me what happens because I've forgotten.
I'll have to get Molly in here.
Yeah, she can say water on my
Yeah.
behalf.
So, one thing about the name of the woods that they're in is called the Whispering Wood, but they get the name from this battle. Before
Mm,
this battle, they were just a nondescript forest in the Riverlands. It was this particular battle here that gives them the name the Whispering Wood.
because the Stark forces were whispering as they sprung the trap. Is that?
Yeah, because, well, I mean, yeah, I guess you know how Kat was constantly talking about like the whisper noises like throughout the chapter. It kept talking about the quietness and the whispering, and then I really like the line that said I think it was like the whispering wood let out its breath all at once when the arrows when they let the arrows fly.
Yeah,
So I guess the general ambush aspect of being quiet and
yeah,
hushed
yeah.
tones is where it got its name from. And also, so the Lands of Ice and Fire, which is a book, places this forest between Riverrun and Old Stones, west of Fairmarket and south of the Blue Fork of the Trident. Now, the non-canon Game of Thrones map places it south of the Blue Fork and north of Raventree, which is slightly different location. But
Hmm.
I would tend to go with Lands of Ice and Fire, as that was
Well, you've
George
got me
Martin.
interested now. I've gone off to look actually.
And it was
Yeah.
they chose this location because it was a good place for Brynden Blackfish Tully to draw Jamie's um, forces out to for the ambush. So that's why they picked this
Right. Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
force.
Certainly, from the non-canonical map, it seems like, yeah, that's the if you actually had people who were pestering Jamie's forces, they would be living in the Whispering Wood. I mean, that's
Right.
the convenient place.
Yeah,
It's
makes sense, I guess.
a wood, not open ground, and B, handy,
Yeah.
close by. So Riverrun sits at the confluence of two rivers, so it's a Y shape. The two rivers come together and then they go off as one river.
Right.
Rather like, as we mentioned earlier, Pittsburgh. I think of Pittsburgh.
Yes, exactly. The confluence of the Monongahela and the Allegheny, making the Ohio.
There you go. Oh, so they both changed names at that point.
Yes.
Neither of them.
Yeah, the Allegheny comes from the north, Monongahela comes from the south. They meet at the point in Pittsburgh, and they become the Ohio River.
But it's different for which I think the Ohio River is quite long. It goes on for like miles and miles and meanders all over many states. Is that right?
Yeah. I think it eventually makes it to the Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. I followed its course once, and I was like, that river is just crazy.
All over the place.
Exactly. I've walked home from the pub in that line. But so the rivers that come to Riverrun are the Tumblestone and the Red Fork, and they leave Riverrun as the Red Fork.
Yeah.
So
I would guess it's because the Red Fork is probably much larger than the Tumblestone, maybe.
Maybe.
Because the Monongahela and the Allegheny are similar in size, so
I see. Yeah. So because of this, the crossing, the actual bridges across these three rivers are all within the confines of Riverrun.
Yeah, right.
And therefore, that's why Brydnen Tully said that you have to besiege it by splitting your forces into three, because you need a force in each of the three zones, because you can't easily cross the rivers. They are not crossable there, not easily anyway.
Right.
And so, because the crossings are within Riverrun, which you are besieging.
Exactly.
The people inside Riverrun can cross them back and forth all they want.
It's like the twins, only you got two rivers you can play with.
Exactly. But of course, if you only have enough forces to besiege Riverrun on two sides, then they can keep reinforcing and getting supplies through the third side. So that means Riverrun is hard to besiege for that reason.
Exactly.
Which is why you need a force of around 12,000 men. Because if you had like 3,000, you'd only have 1,000 in each zone, and they could come out and destroy that 1/3 of yours.
Yes, exactly.
So much of this chapter is Cat reminiscing about past events and worrying about the near future.
Right.
She did give us a couple of tidbits that we didn't know previously. I think we didn't know this, but again, this could just be me. She only had 2 weeks after marrying Ned before he went back off to war.
I will say
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I will say I learned that as well in this chapter. So.
Right. Okay. So we knew they married during Robert's Rebellion, but we didn't know very much about the timing of it. And in that 2 weeks, he impregnated her with Robb.
Right.
That's where Robb came from. So, question here, and then he left for a year.
Yes.
So when he came back, Robb was already born, and he also had a child under his arm, young Master Snow.
Yes.
And that made me wonder, Robb is older than Jon, at least that's the way it's portrayed, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as we're to believe, he fathered Robb before he went off to war. He fathered Jon while he was off at war. So we don't know how much older. I guess Ned would know how much older Robb is than Jon.
So let's do a little bit of math here.
You do that part.
When he got back a year later, Robb would have been about 3 months old.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah,
give or take.
I mean, assuming he's the father,
right.
Robb would have been about 3 months old.
Yes.
So, how he must have been quick off the mark, is all I'm saying. To come back with a baby.
With another baby. Right.
And especially if we're talking about Starfall, which is at the other end of the continent.
Yeah, good point.
He went all the way down there, impregnated her, got back to the war, I mean,
Right.
was this his wedding
Gestation
present to
period
himself?
requires nine, at least
Exactly.
at least 6 to 7 months. I guess a
And
premature birth could have happened, but yeah,
so
I see
yes,
the math you got there.
yes, I'm wondering about this. Feels like this baby must have been. It makes me doubt Ashara Dane. She just is too far away. I mean, she's like a month's ride away.
Yeah.
So a month's hard ride, quick, and then and then I'll see you back here in 10 months with
Yeah,
news of your brother's death.
right. Yeah, you're right. That's there's a lot to think about there. Yeah.
Yeah,
We don't know. I mean, Kat thinks it's a Shara, but Ned says was a lady named Willa. So,
right. And it feels to me like Willa must have been from somewhere north of the neck, frankly.
right.
'Cause-
He barely got out of Riverrun.
exactly. Like, okay, not to dwell on the sex, but he's just had sex. This much I know for a fact. And he gets like half a day down the road, and he's like, you know what? You know what I could do with? This does not sound like the Ned Stark we know, to be
Exactly. It
honest.
really, I think that's part of the whole issue that he feels such shame about.
So
Is
then
it
the
so
question to me is John actually older? Did he come back to get married to Kat, having already?
Oh, interesting conspiracy theory. I like
Uh-huh.
that. Is anybody out there listening? What do you think about that? Let us know. I like
The
that.
one thing I would say is it would have been perfectly apparent because babies change so rapidly in those first few months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Good
if he
point.
was 4 or 5 months old, Kat would not have thought, here's my older child.
Right. She'd be like,
She would have
that's a
thought,
pretty big premature baby right there.
yeah.
You're
She's
telling me
like,
that thing's only a month old?
maybe this is the source of her animosity towards Jon Snow. She knows that he's older.
Oh, maybe. Wow, you're just dropping all kinds of conspiracy theories here.
None of this is in the notes, is it? This is just we're
Yeah.
just riffing here.
Yep. um, yeah, so there's one line where she sees Robb looks like a tall knight on the horse, but all she sees is the baby that he once was. And I think every parent can relate to seeing their growing son and think about how you just basically still see that baby. And the fear of them going off to war is just terrifying. Like I can I remember sitting in this room I'm in right now watching the movie Hacksaw Ridge, which is about a battle in World War II. And at the time my son was about 17 or 18, and it terrified me, the idea of him being in that position. So I feel her pain and her fear there.
Coincidentally, I'm thinking of packing my son off to military school.
Yes, we also made that claim to Ethan many a time.
I got a text from Carsey yesterday saying he's got 2 A's and 2 other grades.
Way to spin it.
So Robb takes Brydnen Blackfish Tully's word that Jamie's restless and will blindly pursue his harassers. And
Yes.
basically, this is good tactics. Blackfish has been sending small forces to see what he will do
Yeah, testing
in
him.
response to a raid. And each time Jamie has led the charge after them and chased them down.
Yeah.
Hopefully they got away. Hopefully it wasn't just like sacrificing these guys. And so now this is how they're able to spring the trap. They're like, okay, now we know what the response will be. All we have to do is send a big enough force that he sends a decent sized force and lure him to this spot. And
Yeah.
it works perfectly.
Yep. It is a bit of a gamble. I mean, he's gambling that Brydnen Tully's information is correct. If he's wrong and they know that they're there, that could go disastrously for them. But it's kind of reminded me of like when he put all of his eggs in the phrase letting us cross at the twins basket. He rolled the dice there and it worked out. and both times he doesn't really have a backup plan. So, I wondered if maybe he's just like a war strategy prodigy, or maybe it's just beginner's luck that is at some point destined to run out.
I think there was good reason to trust Brydnen Tully. He's proven himself. He's well respected as a military guy. So sending him out with 300 men as the outriders of this army seemed like a good idea. I will say, though, if Brydnen Tully's reputation has been forged at the Bloody Gate, honestly, you'd have to be pretty bad to have failed in that job, given that it stood unassailed for thousands of years. And in the time he was in charge, nobody tried.
Nobody even tried.
So,
he's the best knight of the gate there's ever been. He's 0 for 0.
So, but then on the flip side, Brydnen Tully's reputation seems to be well deserved, and his intel was good here. But is Jamie all that? I mean, he's fallen into a trap pretty badly here. I mean, the Lannister side was so on top in this war,
right?
Until this moment.
Yeah,
this moment has really, it's not tipped the balance, but it's brought it a lot closer back to balance.
Definitely.
Because you know how fond Tywin is of Jamie, and you know how fond Cersei is of Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the reason I question his tactics here is when you set up for a long siege, the main focus of what you're doing is inwards, towards the place you're besieging. But your only real vulnerability is outwards, for someone sneaking up behind you and catching you unawares. So you need to do reconnaissance. You need to know about if you're going to be attacked from behind. I mean, sure, apparently he wasn't getting much intel because they kept shooting the birds out of the sky.
Yeah, and they kept killing the outriders that they found. But even Brydnen Tully said he should have been sending out more, but he wasn't. He should have been sending out more men, wondering why his outriders aren't coming back. But apparently,
yes.
I swear I sent that guy out.
Yeah.
He never
come back in 2 to 16 days with the information. That's not very good planning either.
Yeah. I mean, Tywin can brag all he wants about Jamie and negatively compare him to Tyrion, but I feel like Tyrion would not have fallen for this trap as easily. I feel like he would have been more prepared to know what he's getting into before. And why is he leading his men through the woods so late at night anyway? This battle takes place. It ends in the dawn. So shouldn't they have camped somewhere? Like they're riding through this forest in the middle of the night. I don't know. I'm no battle strategist. It just feels like it's the middle of the night. Camp somewhere in safety. In the middle of the day when you can see the surrounding areas, then you can go through the forest.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
How far from Riverrun do you think they are? I mean, like a couple of hours?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how quickly an entire army well, it's not an entire army. He takes about it doesn't really say how many men, but
it doesn't say.
He says
you get the feeling it's like 500 to 1,000. Well, maybe less than that.
Yeah, Cat says 3/4 of the army is still coiled around Riverrun, which would make you think he took about a quarter of the army, which would be several thousand.
Right, and also most of the people from that quadrant of the siege.
Yes,
If you think you've only got a third of the force in each quadrant, a quarter is a big piece of a third.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so speaking of that, we get some reconnaissance info from Blackfish Tully. So Jamie has about 15,000 men but around the three different camps at Riverrun. He says he's got 12,000 foot soldiers and 2,000 to 3,000 horse. And then Galbart Glover says, the Kingslayer has us outnumbered 3-1. So if that's true, then Robb has about 5,000 men. So that means that more than 15,000 of the northern host went to the battle on the Green Fork, if we're to take all this as factual information, which is a bigger number than we were discussing last, the previous Tyrion chapter.
Yeah.
But of course, this army also grew. Robb's army also grew because Jason Mallister's forces joined up with this army because they were coming from Seaguard, which is just north of the Blue Fork, the headwaters of the Blue Fork. And they also picked up some stray soldiers who had been lost after the defeat at Riverrun. So maybe even more men were in that eastern side of the northern army that
Yeah, it's
went
a good
to.
point. And again, I give credit here to the TV show because I think they got the balance better. The army that went south down the King's Road needed to be the feint. It needed to not be the majority of your forces.
Yeah, yeah.
Which it clearly is. I mean, clearly from what you're saying, it was at least 3 times the size of the force that crossed the Green Fork.
Yeah, it is much closer in numbers. I mean, of course, they're just using, they're just using estimates, I'm guessing, when he says they have us outnumbered 3-1, that might not be true, and
who knows how bad Galbart Glover's math is.
right. When Kat says 3/4 of the army is still wrapped around Riverrun, she said she'd been to half 100 tournaments, and we called her out on that math.
we know she's lying.
So, these could all just be rough estimates, but we knew that that Tywin Lannister's army had about 20,000-ish, and if they were marching down there with 15,000, it's a much more even fight than I was thinking it was.
They didn't have the cavalry. That was the thing. It was basically the foot soldiers.
Yes, it was.
But that's an awful big sacrifice.
Yeah, it is. I guess we discussed this a lot last Tyrion episode, but it just does not seem like they were used right. I still think they were used incorrectly. Now, I will say that we heard of Jason Mallister. We heard his name all the way back in the prologue, page 3, actually, at least on my Google version of the book. It was his men that caught Will from the prologue skinning a deer on Mallister grounds. And then Kat and Sir Roderick came across him on the King's Road before they stopped at the inn.
And she didn't recognize him.
She recognized him. He didn't recognize her.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
He was also...
For that reason, she felt safe to stay at the inn.
Yes, precisely. Yeah. He and his sons were at the Hands Tourney. And we talked about them being one of the 2 Riverlands houses that weren't basically conquered by the Lannister forces. It was the Mallisters and the Freys because they were much further north than the fighting had been so far.
Yeah. So as we mentioned in the summary, Robb wants Kat to have an honor guard, a bodyguard. He wants to give her 50. She wants 10. They settle on 30. But in return, she insists that he has 30 men around him, which turns out actually to be a good idea because Jamie almost got to him.
Yes.
So
good thing it wasn't 28.
Exactly, because they definitely did some damage. So Torrhen and Eddard Karstark were killed by Jamie, and their older brother was taken as a hostage in the battle in the Tyrion chapter. They were the 2 who were mean to Bran.
Exactly. Yes, they were the 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, we want them to win, but if anyone had to go, the ones who were mean to Bran deserved it the most.
And this, of course, is going to very much upset Lord Rickard Karstark, and so later when
because that's all 3 of his sons either dead or captured.
Yes. And so when they bring Jamie to Kat later at the end of this chapter, and then Kat says, put him in irons and send him away, and Robb says, and keep a strong guard around him because Lord Karstark's going to want him dead. And then Kat asks why, and then this is when he explains who all died in this attack.
Not because he's worried about Jamie escaping, but because he's worried about Lord Karstark getting to him.
Yes, and they need him. They need him alive for bargaining.
Oh yeah, they do.
Jamie says to Cat when he's brought to her, he says, "I would give you my sword, but I've seemed to have mislaid it." Robb later says he mislaid it in Eddard Karstark's neck. So, yeah. Well, we also lose Darren Hornwood in this particular battle, and he was the heir of Hollis Hornwood, who died in the battle on the Green Fork, the Tyrion chapter, and he was his only son. So now there might be a bit of a
power vacuum.
Yes, power vacuum for the Hornwoods.
Yeah, those were the only members of Robb's honor guard who were killed. The remainder were Patrick.
At least that we know of. They're the only ones who were mentioned that
listed.
Were killed.
Yeah. But the other members of the honor guard who we do know of, who by assumption, if we know of them and they weren't listed as dead, probably they weren't killed.
Right. Yes, I agree. I agree.
Patrick Lannister, who is Jason Lannister's son, he's the heir to Seaguard. He's very good friends with Brydnen Tully, apparently.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yeah, and then we've got Small John Umber, not to be confused with the Great John, and he is heir to Last Hearth and the son of the Great John.
I wonder if when the Great John shuffles off this mortal coil, Small John might get a better name.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree. He
Yeah,
definitely
I wouldn't
should.
stick with that.
At least like the Big John. Maybe not Great John, like at least just like Big John.
Yeah.
He's probably not a small guy.
No, he probably isn't if he's, yes. So, Wendell Manderley, who, if you remember, came down from White Harbour?
White Harbour, yes, exactly.
Well, look at me. White Harbour with Catelyn.
Yeah.
If you remember, he was chunky. And so would draw the arrows to him, is the hope. As Bronn said last time.
Yes.
Stay near the big guy.
I'm picturing Robb like, who do I want in my group? He must have heard the same advice that Bronn was given. Follow the big man into battle. He'll draw the arrows.
Guy casts an awfully big shadow. I wouldn't mind being in that.
And then we get Robin Flint. And we've not really met Robin Flint yet, but Maester Luwin told Bran, and I believe it was the very last Bran chapter, that there were others waiting to join up with Robb, so he needed to get going. He needed to ride out, because there were other groups waiting to join up with this army along the King's Road, and he specifically mentions Lords Manderley and Flint. So this is the Robin Flint that he was referring to.
Good work. And so Daisy Mormont, who's the heir to Bear Island, she is Geo Mormont's niece and Jorah Mormont's cousin. She seems pretty bad posterior. She is...
she does.
She seems like someone who might be able to wield a Valyrian sword.
Exactly.
To a hot-headed and dubious parentaged member of the Night's Watch.
Yeah, she's 6 foot tall, and she, Kat says that she was given a Morning Star about the time that other girls were given dolls, so she's been fighting her whole life. And we were talking in that John chapter about, okay, maybe there's not currently someone who, has use for Longclaw. So have it now for your life, and when you get old, you give it back to House Mormont.
Absolutely.
But Daisy Mormont sounds like she'd be pretty handy with this sword.
She could already be using it. Exactly.
Yes,
and
precisely.
She's fighting real people, not Grumpkins and Snarks.
She should have written to Uncle Geor and said, hey, that sword that's been sitting around up there? Could I borrow it, please?
To be fair to Geor, the Grumpkins and Snarks came true the day before he handed that over.
Yeah. You make a good point. Yeah.
He was sitting on it thinking, I'll give this to Daisy one day. And then he was like, whoop, nope, I'm going to give it to this guy.
Yeah.
no less than 5 Frey sons.
Yeah, we don't
Theon
get any
Greyjoy.
mention of who the 5 Freys are.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, once you got as many children as he does, it's just...
Right.
You start numbering them. Or calling them all George Foreman, really.
Yeah. That doesn't add up to 30, but those are the named guards that we were made aware of.
Yeah. So Catelyn makes a point of noticing the song of snow shrikes, a type of bird. They are from the north. And as she hears them, she thinks they're coming. And it wasn't quite clear what she was thinking they're coming about. I mean, she may have been thinking, oh, the snow shrikes are coming, but presumably it was something less obvious than that. The battle was about to start, so she could be thinking of Jamie's army. But I don't think they're known to be migratory, so it feels like their presence this far south is somewhat odd and a harbinger of what?
Yes, I agree. I think maybe the fact that she saw the birds from the north in the south and she said they're coming. When she said they're coming, I believe she was referring to seeing the Lannister army come into the trap.
Right.
But I think it was also kind of a double entendre. Also supposed to be like, things from the north are coming south. But I have a little issue with A Wiki of Ice and Fire here. I mean, I don't really, but they claim that the snow shrikes live in these woods here, based on this chapter. But that was not how I interpreted it. To me, it felt like...
it was a surprise that they were in those woods.
Yes, to me it felt like they maybe followed the path of food or something from this huge army coming south. It's, they were here because of the army's presence. I don't know. I don't know anything about snow shrikes and their food behaviors, but it seems like maybe they followed the large army. And it also felt to me like a metaphor about this northern army being out of place here as well, because they're all northern roots.
Yeah, the only other thing I thought about was I wondered if it was more sort of like an extra layer. Was she somehow intuiting that the others are coming?
Yeah, maybe.
That somehow these birds are fleeing the winter because they sense something greater coming from the north.
Right. Yeah, hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, I like that. I also like how Hollis Mullen has a propensity as Mr. Obvious. I did not know that about him. I had forgotten. He also, when Kat says they're coming, he says they're coming, and she's like, he has a tendency to state the obvious. And when they dump the
didn't she just say it?
I think she thought it, and he said,
I guess it's. Oh, I see.
And then later, when they dump the Kingslayer in front of her, how Mullen goes, "The Kingslayer," and she said, as if that was necessary to add. But then we get to the battle scene, and I really enjoyed this battle scene. I love how it's all done through sounds. She sees Robb take off, and she can see, some of the men start their journey down the hill into this battle. But then within a few minutes, the battle is out of her sight, so she just closes her eyes and listens to the sounds of the battle unfolding. And that would be terrifying as a parent, knowing that your child is down in all that.
Yeah, she mentions at one point she hears him clearly.
Yeah, as if he's standing next to her.
To me.
Yeah.
And when he comes back, he's on a different horse, which is going to be disconcerting.
Yes.
So you were quite close to the action then, it would appear.
Yes, much like Tyrion, who seemed to have changed horses in the previous chapter. At least this time it was mentioned that he changed horses.
Did they trade, perhaps?
Right.
So Jaime's brought in front of them. Theon urges Robb to kill Jaime, which, I mean, he may not be privy to all of the discussions, but you've got to be pretty stupid not to think that that's a stupid idea.
Right, yeah. Yeah, he wants him to cut his head off.
Let's kill him and send that back to King's Landing and say, and if you don't let Ned go...
Oh, wait.
We won't send the rest of it.
Yeah, it's not the first time. If you remember back to Bran 5, he was urging Robb to call the banners before Robb was ready to do that. And remember, he put that arrow through. Oh shoot, whatever. I can't think of that guy's name anymore. The guy that had Bran,
The wildlings,
Stiv.
or
I believe it was
Stiv. Look at
Stiv.
you. It
They
was
put
Stiv.
the arrow through Stiv, and then he wanted Robb to feed Osha to the wolves, and Robb was like, "No, I'm gonna take her in and question her about what's going on." So he seems to this seems to be a trend with him to just want to rush to do something.
Yeah. So the balance of power has shifted. How much? I mean, it feels like now they have the forces to break the siege at Riverrun with Jamie captive.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if they've got 15,000 to Jamie's 12,000, and at least 1/3 of one of the three sides of the siege is now
Severely
significantly
depleted. Yeah,
depleted, it feels like you could break the siege here.
yeah. And it's not just Jamie that they have as a hostage. Uh, they had a huge payday of hostages, including 3 Lannisters. They got 2 of Aemon Frey's and Jenna Lannister's sons. Cleos, he's the firstborn son. He's around mid 30ish to early 40s. And they've got Tyon Frey, and he is the third son of Aemon and Jenna. He's around 14ish. What I thought about that is there are many Freys in this Northern Army who would be direct like uncles and cousins of these two of
Yeah,
Cleus and Tyon. I wonder how they feel
yeah.
about that taking.
Well, I mean, probably what I would do with those guys then is just like say, hey, you can't go anywhere, but you're free to just wander
Right.
around the camp.
Yeah, yeah,
You're on our team now.
yeah.
And but we're going to send threatening letters to the Lannisters that we'll never see you again.
Right.
But don't worry, we won't kill you. We'll just keep you because you can come and live with the twins.
You're right.
You're Freys.
And they also, so Theon says he starts to say we've got the son of one of Tywin's dead brothers, but he's not the son of a dead brother. He's Kevin Lannister's son. They have Willem Lannister hostage. He's the son of Kevin Lannister and Dorna Swift. So I guess Theon was just wrong about that. I don't know, but
Either Theon was wrong or George Martin was wrong.
right, maybe the editor missed that as well.
Yeah.
But Willem Lannister is the second son of Kevin and Dorna, and he's around 11 to 13ish, and he has a twin brother named Martin. So sons of both the Lannisters leading that other army, both Tywin and Kevin, now have sons that have been captured, plus 2 sons of their sister. So
Right.
they've got some.
Yeah. 4 of that generation is pretty impressive. That's
Yeah.
significant scalps. Yeah. I mean, so you think of Ned and Jamie as kind of equivalent,
Right.
in
Yeah.
terms of the sort of like the strength of the hostage, and then maybe Willem Lannister, Kevin's son, maybe at the same level as Sansa.
Right. Yeah.
And then who else did the Lannisters have?
Well, yeah,
They took some captives at the Battle of the Green Fork.
Yeah, they did. But the Starks don't know that they don't have Arya. So,
That's true.
they must think they have Arya, and they've got Edmure. So, I guess Edmure.
Edmure Tully. Yeah, that's the one I was forgetting. Yeah, but yeah, this is almost an equalizer. This is not far short.
And Theon mentions that they, on top of all of these named people that they don't actually name them, but the people that I just named, they've taken also 100 knights and a dozen lords captive. So big haul in the captive department.
For sure.
But Cat then reminds them the war is not over. That the head of the snake might be gone, but 3/4 of the body is still wrapped around Riverrun. So, like we were talking earlier, if there's 15,000 in Jamie's total army based on Brydnen Blackfish Tully's estimation, then that means that they brought about 4,000 men on this excursion here. That seems way too many for this.
Right.
I don't know if my math is right. I don't always trust
Yeah.
my math, but
I think one of the things you might do if you were Brydnen Tully is you might slowly increase the severity of these raids to see what the response is, so that you can sort of make a prediction of what if we send 300, what would the response be? You know,
right.
I think he'd send 4,000 after us. You know, and
Yeah. It seems to be what happened. Brydnen Tully was given 300 men, and based on Cat saying 3/4 of the army is still around Riverrun, that would leave a quarter of the army here having been destroyed, which would be just under 4,000-ish troops, which seems like a lot.
The one thing I would say here is, I mean, if they want to alleviate the siege at Riverrun, which I'm pretty sure they do, they've got time. I mean, assuming that their plan has worked, which we know it has, then Tywin is a month away.
Yeah.
I mean, at least 2 or 3 weeks away.
Right.
You know, and that's you've got time to pick this army off. You know, you could do the same trick again and again, basically.
Right. Work this time. Let's keep trying it. You got nobody left over there.
Yeah. And now you've got at least 100 more horses than you had. You know,
Yeah.
Steal their armor, steal their swords. You know.
Yeah.
All right, background.
All right, so background was a little tricky this chapter, and since we've talked about the Green Fork plenty, we just had a battle on it, and we've talked about the Red Fork a lot because Riverrun sits on the Red Fork. We haven't talked much about the Blue Fork of the Trident. So since this battle takes place not that far from the town of Fairmarket, I thought I'd talk about a battle that once took place in this area that featured the Blue Fork. So back before Aegon's conquering, the Riverlands were ruled for centuries by the Storm Kings of House Durrandon. However, Harwin Hoare, aka Harwin Hardhand, King of the Iron Islands, realized that the Riverlands were weakly held by House Durrandon and planned an invasion of the area to overthrow the Storm King's rule. The Ironborn landed 100 longships south of Seaguard and then carried those ships to the Blue Fork. Heron's Ironborn defeated first Sir Samwell Rivers and then Lady Agnes Blackwood. His defeat of the Blackwoods was aided by Lady Agnes's rival, Lord Lothar Bracken, and this ended the Rivermen's resistance to the Ironborn. However, King Eric Durrandon marched from the Stormlands with a huge host. Many of the river lords, including the Brackens, the Charltons, the Goodbrooks, the Pages, and the Viprans, allied with Harwin Hoare, hoping for an independent Riverlands. So King Eric's Stormlanders were therefore harassed and denied supplies as they marched north. Harwin and Eric met at Fairmarket on the Blue Fork, and Eric had 1.5 times as many Stormlanders as Harwin had Ironborn and Rivermen. But the Stormlanders were ill-supplied and tired from the long march and their harried supply lines. Despite being outnumbered, the longships of the Ironborn allowed them to seize the river crossing, and ultimately it was a shattering defeat for the Durrandons, who lost half their men. 2 of Eric's brothers fell in the fighting, although Eric was able to escape. Unfortunately, things did not go as the Rivermen had hoped after the victory. Rather than giving the Rivermen the independence they had wanted and fought for, Harwin Hoare claimed the Riverlands for himself, making him the first king of the Isles and the Rivers.
There you go. Well, thanks.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting geographically how the river runs almost all the way across the continent. It starts very close to the west coast,
Yeah.
but flows the other way, flows to the east coast.
Yeah.
And so that's why the Iron Islanders did what they did. They shipped up on the west coast and carried their boats to the river because it wasn't very far. Easier than trying to go around the continent and sail up the river.
Right. Yep.
So, comparison with the television show, we begin to realize that the budget for season 1 of Game of Thrones was not as vast as it became. Because for the second chapter in a row, they dodged the battle entirely. Last time they did it by
Did this time Robb get knocked out?
No. This time, they simply announced, "Oh, we've caught Jamie Lannister." Like,
okay.
Nothing else. It was like, "Yeah, we caught Jamie Lannister." Which I think it segued in because if you remember the way the previous chapter ended, it was Tywin was saying, "Where is Robb?" and he said 18,000 men kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it then sort of segued to the sort of celebration that they caught Jamie.
Okay.
So it kind of made a certain amount of sense. But yes, a much cheaper way to do a battle. Than,
Yeah, I guess so. Just say that it happened.
Having a bunch of extras. Yeah. Pedantry Corner.
I did not know Cat was so tall, and I don't believe that she is. There's a line where Cat says, and wondered when her son had grown so big, 15 and near as tall as she was. And I don't know that Cat is all that tall. Now, my son was 5'2" in 10th grade, at the start of 10th grade, and that would not be considered very tall for about a 15-year-old boy. But and he was smaller than Stacy, but I would not have said, when did he get so big? And multiple times refer to him as the tall knight. So now Ethan did grow half a foot in 10th grade, but in this case, I just don't know how she could think of him as so tall. I guess from her perspective, he was a little boy.
That's what I was going to say.
He's...
Through a mother's eyes, he's looking awfully tall these days. Yeah, but yeah, you've got a point. Again, we do have reasons to question her math. Maybe it also goes to sort of like, he's 27 hands high. You know?
Yeah, that's all I got.
That's reasonable. I didn't find anything in this one, I got to say. I thought it was partly this whole poetry thing. It was poetic. It wasn't specific. I need specifics to haul them up of their pedantry.
It was.
If you say
yes,
there were birds,
it was very poetic.
I'm like, yeah, okay, there were birds. I'd love to take the next piece for you, McKelly, but it's written in your impenetrable code, so I don't know what it's all about.
In news and notes, you mean? Well,
yeah.
I had nothing for news and notes, so I thought I'd mention, because I'd mentioned it before, my nephew's show, All Gas No Breaks, his internet show was nominated for a Streamy, which is basically like streaming YouTube television type, YouTube streaming stuff, like an Emmy for such things.
Wow!
So
congratulations.
Yes.
Every time you talk about him, I become just slightly more envious and peevish.
I realized I didn't even say his name last time. It's Andrew Callahan. Andrew Callahan. All Gas, No Breaks. Check it out if you're interested. Nominated for a Streamy. We had no personal news and notes to discuss, so I thought I would mention that.
Well, that's a good one. So in conclusion, Robb has once again pulled one over on the Lannisters. Well, it's kind of the same trick. I mean, his pulling one over on the Lannisters
part
last
two
time
of the same
was
trick.
Marching 15,000 men to their death. Oh, what a trick I pulled on the Lannisters.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point.
This was the trick side of it. So,
yes, yeah, he outsmarted them, no doubt. And again, I wonder if it's just beginner's luck, or maybe it's great northern minds. I don't know. Minus Roose Bolton, because we disagreed with Roose Bolton's plan to get into a battle instead of just keeping the Lannister army moving.
I'm in Camp Bolton here. I think he followed the instructions to the letter. The instructions were stupid.
Okay. You're not blaming it on Roose. You're blaming it on the original instructions he was
Robb,
given.
basically. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it should have been 2,000 men, each of them carrying a scarecrow. So that it looked like 4,000 men.
Right. Yeah, I could see. Yeah, good plan. That would have worked much better. But they've got the commander of this Lannister army here, Jamie, but the siege is still ongoing at Riverrun. So will Robb be able to keep the magic touch going against the siege? I guess we'll find out.
Or does he turn his back on his grandfather?
Right. Yeah. I guess that would be the other option.
Because you could now go somewhere else and retrench and say, hey, let's now send some letters and see if we can exchange for... Because that's all they really want.
Yeah, they just want their people back.
I think they want their people back, yeah. So.
Yeah. But we have to keep in mind that the Lannister army has had to split their forces around Riverrun in order to carry out this siege, and will that play into the advantage of the Robb's Northern Army.
So yeah, certainly if they want to, Riverrun's there for them to retake. I think. I mean that would be the natural next step, especially with Catelyn in the Force, because she's going to be like, you know what, I would kind of like it if you'd rescue my dad. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
and actually, if you think about it, where is Edmure Tully? He is presumably captive in this Force somewhere.
Yes, right.
I would imagine, unless they dragged him back off into the Westerlands somehow.
Good point. We don't know yet.
And as we said, I mean, it feels like the scales have been significantly tipped back towards a balance.
The
war started over Tyrion, and now Jamie is a much bigger prize than Tyrion ever was.
Yes, right.
Because there are Lannisters who care about him.
Yes. Yeah. Now, Jamie's not the heir to Casterly Rock because he's a member of the Kingsguard, so that's not on the table. But he is the pride of the Lions, if you will.
Yeah, well done.
You see what I did
there. Rubbed off, I see. I do. You didn't need to explain it. I saw what you did.
Yeah, the way I was motioning with my hands.
It was when you held up that sign that said, "Wait for this."
But there's no way they'd hurt Ned of the girls with Jamie in custody, right?
Right. That's the one thing you've done is you've guaranteed their safety, at least until such point as you can negotiate.
Right.
You need to spread this news far and wide. We've got Jamie Lannister.
Yes. Whatever you were thinking of doing with our family, keep in mind we now have the Kingslayer. Yeah. And the other 3 Lannister captives aren't anything to scoff about.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, funnily enough, you brought that up in the notes, and I didn't really notice it, but yeah, they're significant scalps. They are significant captives.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing. See, I was just thinking, Jamie versus Ned. Jamie is not a big enough bargaining chip to get them all back, but this whole group is.
Yeah, maybe that it's definitely evened things up a good bit, getting all these Lannisters hauled in here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're done.
Yeah.
As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhall. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And if you like what we're doing, please go out and leave us a rate and review. That would really help us out. If you don't have time to leave us a review, we understand, although we appreciate it if you did, of course. But if you wouldn't mind giving us 5 stars, that would be fantastic.
Well, thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, everyone, it's Mac. We blathered on a little too long at the beginning of this episode, so if you have any interest in listening to Simon and I go on and on, you can do so after the music ends.
Oh, that's not true, actually. I know our fans like our boating stories. I actually went wakeboarding at the weekend.
Wow, this past weekend?
I know.
Cool.
Because it was very warm on Saturday. If you remember.
It was, yes. I was on the golf course. I was very warm as well.
Oh my! Our fans are going to particularly love a boating golfing story. That's going to really that's going to get them going. Yeah, but I actually only did one run, and I popped up first time and went until I could do no more, and then I let go.
Wow, look at you!
Yeah,
You're like a pro.
And that's now 4 days ago. My arms are still throbbing because basically, I mean, you're towing a speedboat. I mean, it's towing you, but it's the same idea.
Yeah, there's still the same amount of force being applied.
Exactly. And when you start wakeboarding, have you ever done it?
No, never.
So you sit in the water with your feet pointing to the boat with this big board on it.
Yeah.
So that first few seconds, you are displacing an awful lot of water.
Sure. Yeah.
And it just goes, I really want to pull you out of your shoes.
Want to pull your arms out of their sockets.
Exactly. And so that first few seconds is it gets you.
Uh-huh.
But it was very nice. It was fun.